Hey, it's Patrick, and today I'm going to show you how to upgrade the complete driveline on your Milwaukee 8 Softail. We are going to be using a 2019 Fat Bob, but for most Milwaukee 8 Softails and even Milwaukee 8 baggers, this install is going to be basically the same. And even if you're just reassembling your stock driveline, this also is going to be very useful. We are upgrading ours. We have a 131-inch motor that's going to be driving through all of our driveline parts, and we need to make sure those are strong. So we're going to be converting our final drive belt into a chain. We're going to be upgrading our stock clutch to a Recluse torque drive, and we're going to be swapping out the comp sprocket for a solid unit. Now, that comp sprocket in stock form is a known weak spot, so we're going to upgrade that to make it stronger, but we're also going to gear ours down just a little bit to gain more acceleration. We don't want any clutch slippage, hence the torque drive, and we're just switching to that chain, so we don't have to worry about broken belts. Now, we are going to be starting completely disassembled, so if you want to see that, we have a complete engine and primary disassembly video. You guys can check out all that, and as I mentioned, we have a 131, and we have actually made videos on that complete build. We have a whole series from crankshaft, big bore, cylinder head, cams, and even an overall video with before and after horsepower numbers. Now, you are gonna need a few specialty tools depending on which of these upgrades you're doing. To get the pulley nut off, you're gonna need a really deep 2¼ inch socket. You're gonna need a pulley or sprocket jammer for that nut. And when you go to put the comp sprocket and the clutch basket back on, you're gonna need some sort of jammer bar in there to hold those still while you torque them. Speaking of torquing them, you're also going to need a torque wrench that goes to 175 foot-pounds. But enough talking, let's get to work. So the first thing we're gonna start with is our chain conversion, specifically our front pulley and front sprocket. And the reason we need to do that is because we need to put our inner primary on, so we're gonna cover this area up, so we need to work on it first. Now, if you follow along with our disassembly video, you should be to this part, and you should have your rear wheel loose. If you don't, loosen up that rear wheel so you can slip the belt off so you can work on this pulley. Next, you're gonna need something to jam this pulley up with to get the nut off there. The best case scenario is this special tool here from Jim's. It'll jam it up real nice. Otherwise, you have to come up with some way on your own to jam this. Use the belt to hold it tight. Something you're gonna need to be able to hold that still. So to put this tool on, we just need to put it around the pulley and tighten it up. And it'll line up with the pulley teeth. The bigger part of this is where you put it, because you want the little rubber handle to be jammed on something. Then we're gonna take a 3/16 Allen. We're gonna pull the locking plate off from around the nut. And we're going to take our big socket and get this nut off of here. This big socket is gonna come with this support piece here, and we're gonna thread it on to the end of this shaft. This is reverse thread, so we're gonna thread it on here to the left. Because that nut is so thin, it's gonna keep our socket, when we're twisting on it, from going all sideways and stripping out our nut. So where I had our tool in the frame, it was starting to slip by. You definitely don't want that. So I did go ahead and move this up here to the pivot on the swing arm. So basically where we're at with this nut on our pulley is our worst case scenario. And this does happen sometimes. I've had it happen to me before. This thing is stuck on here. We've tried heat. We've even tried to impact. We've tried impact to be real careful not to tear stuff up. Make sure you have one of these Jim's tools. You don't want that impact, transferring straight into your transmission. So we're gonna have to cut this nut off. I'm gonna drill a hole in it. I'm gonna chip away at it, and then I'm gonna split it with a chisel and replace it with a heavier duty nut. It's just that easy. Okay, the next things we have to do is we have to get the old belt off. We have to pull the rear wheel off to swap out our pulley for our new sprocket. Now, as far as getting the belt off, there's a couple things you can do. You can disassemble part of the swing arm to get the belt out of there in one piece, but since we're converting ours to a chain, I don't need that belt anymore. I'm just gonna cut it in two and slip it right out of there. Use a 5/8 ratchet, and we're gonna pull our stock pulley off there, and then we're gonna put our new sprocket on. but it's really important that you use the right offset. You can't just bolt the sprocket straight to the wheel. We're actually using the Performance Machine conversion kit, so all our hard work as far as like offsets in the front and rear sprocket are done for us. We're gonna use some Loctite. Make sure you torque this in a star pattern, go to 60 pounds. So now we're at 60 pounds. We're gonna mark these and back them off a half a turn before we do the final torque, anywhere from 77 to 83 foot-pounds. We're gonna put the rear wheel back on, but we're not gonna tighten anything up just yet. Now that we have our rear wheel back on, we're gonna go ahead and slide our front sprocket on, and we're gonna put our nut on there. We're just gonna snug it up. We're not gonna do anything else with it. Then we're gonna get our chain put on here and we're gonna cut our chain to length. You wanna make sure when you cut that chain, you're giving yourself length to adjust it, but not cutting it too short. For us, we're using a rivet style master link. You may be using a clip style. Process is the same. I like to have the axle basically in the center. That way I still have some adjustment when I get the chain cut and set. How I like to make sure my rear wheel is straight is I like to measure from the center of the swing arm bolt to the center of the axle. There are some like wire tools out there in that. I choose a tape measure. And while you're tightening this up and getting your slack set in your chain, just make sure those measurements are even on either side. I like to have about 3/8 of an inch in here as far as slack, but I also set them on the tight side when the chain is new because it's probably gonna stretch a little. Might be worth mentioning that you want your bike sitting on the ground when you're doing this or sitting under some weight. Don't have the rear wheel in the air. That's perfect. So we're gonna do our final torque on our axle nut, 95 to 105 foot-pounds. So now we need to torque our front sprocket here, and you're gonna need a way to jam this up or hold this still. Motion Pro makes a real slick little sprocket jammer here. Then we're going to take our big socket, we're gonna torque this to 100 foot-pounds. Then we're gonna back it off one full turn. So now I know where I'm going. Try one full turn. Then we're gonna torque it to 35 foot-pounds. And then after that, 35 to 40 degrees. And why that says 35 to 40 degrees is because we have to line up with the holes on our lock plate there. Now we've upgraded our sprocket nut here to this Jim's heavy duty piece, but same procedure if you're using your stock nut. Oh yeah. There she blows. You get those lined up, blue Loctite, and Loctite those little screws 90 to 120 inch-pounds. All right, next thing we need to do is get our inner primary mounted up there. Make sure you put a fresh gasket that seals up in between your engine and the inner primary. For some reason, you took this shift lever off. Make sure you put it back on before you put the inner primary on. Gonna grease the hole. And then we're gonna tighten up our 5 inner primary bolts. You need to tighten them in a sequence, and the sequence is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anywhere from 26 to 28 foot-pounds. All right, so now we have to put our clutch basket and compensator sprocket on. We need to make sure our rotor is on for our charging system and the spacer that goes behind it. So I'm gonna put this together like this was the engine. So you have these 2 big spring washers. These are spring washers because they're cupped, and you want them cupped pieces facing together so there's a gap in here. Then we'll slide this flat part of this shaft down. Then we have 2 more spring washers. Again, they're cupped, and you want the cupped parts facing each other. There's 1 more cupped washer. It drops on there like that. This part of the comp sprocket is gonna drop into those grooves. The actual sprocket itself is going to drop down in there with that nut assembly and washer inside of the compensator sprocket. Now in our application, we're upgrading our compensating sprocket to a solid unit. You put the comp sprocket and the clutch basket on, you have to do it at the same time with the primary chain on there. They can't go on one at a time. Once we get those in, then we can put our jammer bar in there and torque it. We're going to torque the clutch basket and the compensator. To do that, you're gonna need some sort of jammer bar to keep these from spinning around. You're gonna use red Loctite on both of them. Now the key here is to remember that the clutch hub nut is reverse thread, so you're gonna go left to tighten that up. If you're using your stock compensator, you're actually gonna need a T70 to tighten that up. Put that washer on there first. We're going to tighten the front one first. We're gonna go to 100 foot-pounds. Back it off a half turn. Then go to 175 foot-pounds. And then on the clutch, we're gonna tighten that reverse thread anywhere from 70 to 80 foot-pounds. All right, we're gonna put our automatic chain tensioner in now. We're gonna throw some Loctite on these bolts, torque them 21 to 24 foot-pounds. Once we get that in there, we can cut the zip tie off and let that put pressure back onto our primary chain. Now we're gonna put our starter in. We're gonna feed it through from the right side of the bike over here, basically this solenoid side up. We're gonna put a little bit of grease around here. Bracket, there we go. Slide it in, put a little thread locker on our 2 Allens. Take a 1/4 inch Allen and put those screws in and torque them from 22 to 24 foot-pounds. Then just have to attach power wire here and plug it in, and your starter's ready to go. Okay, at this point, if you're reusing your stock clutch, you can go right ahead into the clutch adjustment part, but we're going to replace ours with a Recluse torque drive because we have a big engine on this thing and we need a little more strength on our clutch to hold the horse torques and get them to the ground. And what that Recluse torque drive does, it uses more plates in the clutch. What that does, it gives us more surface area, therefore holds more horsepower. We need to take everything out of here to start with. So we're gonna take a 10mm, we're gonna take our 3 bolts out here, take our spring out. Our pressure plate will come out and we're gonna take all of our frictions and steels out. On the inside, there's 2 springs that we're gonna need to use, but not a spring in the traditional sense. The flat one goes in first. And then this one is kind of cupped, and you want that tapered in going in towards the bike, so that flared end is sticking out. We need to put these little steel liners in between the fingers on the clutch hub basket. And they just slide right in there. We wanna make sure the open side is out, just like the clutch basket. Clutch fibers chatter on the basket. It tends to wear the edges of the fingers there. So we're gonna put these steel inserts in there that come with the clutch kit. Okay, now we're ready to start putting the clutch steels and fibers into the basket. Remember, we left our 2 little spring pieces inside. Now, there's a couple different steels and fibers that come with this. There's 3 thicker fibers that come with the pack. All of the other ones are the same. There's 1 thicker steel that comes with the pack. All the other steels are the same. We're gonna start with 1 thicker fiber, putting it into the clutch basket. And then we're gonna use all of the standard sizes, going steel fiber, all the way to the outside of the clutch pack. We've already pre-soaked ours. Most clutch companies want you to pre-soak them. With whatever one you're using, you wanna check as far as what fluid and then how long you should soak them. Okay, now we're down to our last 3 plates. Should have 2 thick fibers and a thick steel. We're gonna put the 1 thick fiber on the clutch pack, and then we're gonna take the other thick fiber, put it on the pressure plate, and then put the thick steel on top of that. Install the pressure plate on there, put our new springs in there. We're gonna torque those 3 bolts down to 72 to 106 inch-pounds. So to make our clutch adjustment, we need to give ourselves the most amount of slack we can in the cable. So if you push the cover up on the cable, there's gonna be a red button right here. Go to the back side, we're gonna take those clips and push them forward so this red button pops out. Then we're gonna take the clutch cable with the spring, we're gonna compress it all the way down tight and push the red button back in. That's gonna give us the most amount of slack in our lever so we can make the adjustment on the clutch. We're gonna make sure our push rod is in there because otherwise we're not gonna do us much good. Then our adjuster, we wanna make sure it's threaded quite a ways out. We're gonna put that in here, we'll throw our snap ring over the top, and then we can start making the adjustment. So what we wanna do is take our 7/32 Allen and we wanna run this down till it just seats, so you can just feel it touching. And you wanna do it very light. I can just feel it touching right there. So as soon as it touches, what Harley says is to squeeze the clutch handle 3 times. And then we're gonna back this off a half to a full turn and then tighten down our 11/16 nut. This thing preloads itself. So we're gonna go back to our red button. We're gonna release it from the back, let it pop out, and then that spring will kind of load itself, and then we'll just press the red button back in. That's it. All right, so now we're gonna button it up. Don't forget to put a new primary cover gasket in there. We're gonna put our primary cover on. That does get torqued in a specific sequence. We're gonna torque those anywhere from 144 to 156 inch-pounds. Now we can fill it up. We're gonna put 40 ounces of our primary fluid in here. Before we do that, we're gonna make sure our drain plug is in and tight. All right, we have the drive line all buttoned up. I feel much better about putting down all those 131 inches of horse torques to the ground through our new, stronger primary. Now, if you have any other questions about any of the parts we used in the install, you can always click on the info tab on the desktop or mobile device. That'll take you to the product detail page. You can see more specs about the parts you're interested in and read other writers' reviews. Still have more questions? Feel free to reach out to our customer service team. They would love to talk to you about your motorcycle and what fits your budget and riding style. I'm Patrick. Thank you for watching. Go work on those motorcycles.